Do you know one of the biggest elements missing in most companies as the reason why they don't have a winning culture? I'm going to tell you exactly what that is today, as well as the 3 ways you can build it in your team starting this week. Before we dive into this episode, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button so that you'll find out anytime I publish new content on leadership influence content and building that winning mindset in your career and in your life. So, what is that missing element that so many companies wish they had, or perhaps don't even realize they don't have as the reason why they don't have a winning culture? It's vulnerability. Vulnerability is one of the biggest keys to being an effective leader because it's that one piece that allows true connection between yourself and the people you're trying to influence. Think about it. That vulnerability creates connection, which creates trust, which creates a sense of belonging and teamwork and unity. It's not just me on an island by myself, it's us in something together. Vulnerability is such a key piece of our personal and our professional relationships because it allows us to connect with others. This coming from someone right here who has struggled with vulnerability. When I was doing my speaking training years ago, one of the things my fellow speakers continue to hit home with me is just be more vulnerable. Help us connect with you. And for me at the time, I just didn't understand it. I thought I'm being honest, I'm being transparent, I don't have anything to hide, but what I was really not doing is opening myself up to connection. That was a big struggle with me early in my speaking career, which prevented me from really connecting with my audiences, just like I struggled to connect with my fellow speakers. Vulnerability, as I saw growing up, was a sign of weakness. The more vulnerable you were, the more likely you were going to get hurt, just as I had in relationships and friendships, as just an everyday part of life. And so at an early age, I built this wall. I built this protection, this guard around myself that kept everyone at a distance. It didn't matter how close our relationship was, there was still a wall between us because I felt that vulnerability was a sign of weakness. I felt that if I was vulnerable, all that was going to do was allow me to get hurt. But what it really did is it prevented me from truly connecting with other people. And I wondered why some of my relationships early on struggled, is they lacked that true connection. I was so laser focused on my goals that I wasn't allowing the people that were part of my team helping me get to those goals, helping us get to those goals, truly connect with me. See, I failed as a leader in that regard is because I thought I could do it without being truly vulnerable. And as Brene Brown, Patrick Lencioni, and other incredible authors, researchers, and speakers have pointed out, vulnerability is so key to our ability to influence and lead others effectively. So without being woo-woo, let's sit around the campfire, sing kumbaya, you know that's not my style, but I still believe there's a way for us to connect and be vulnerable. So how can we start doing it this week? How can we encourage vulnerability in our office place to build our culture toward that of a championship team? Number 1, we have to be willing to share our own experiences. Specifically, we have to share our failures. One of the things I laughed about, especially for the first handful of years running Compete Every Day, is people would always assume I was always in a good mood. I was always positive. I never had bad days. I never struggled. And they would ask me, like, how do you always have good days? How do you always just seem to be on cloud 9, like everything going well, everything happy-go-lucky? And I had to laugh because me knowing my entire story, not just what's posted on social media, but the full story, is I knew I had bad days. I knew there were days that mentally I was in a hole. I knew days that I struggled. I even had just almost suicidal thoughts at times of just being in dark places. And so I would look at them and say, well, what makes you think that I don't have those bad days? And they shared that, well, you never talk about them. We never see them. We just assume everything's all perfect. And what that made me realize is by me putting up this front that everything's always fine, it's building a wall between me and the people I'm trying to serve because they have an unrealistic view of what's really going on in my life. I'm painting this unrealistic picture that everything's always wins. Everything's always good. There are no struggles. There are no bad days. And we know that's false. those things happen. And so one of the biggest keys as being a leader is being able to share our experiences and our failures, to open up a little bit and talk about the things we've gone after, talk about the times we fell short, talk about the bad decisions we made early on in business that buried us under a mountain of debt, and how we found a way to chip our way out of it, to climb out of that hole. Talk about the days we dealt with just overwhelming depression after losing sports and not having that peace in our life, and how mentally it was just this constant turmoil. But what did we do? Who did we surround ourselves to climb out of that? See, when we open ourselves up, start sharing stories of our own experiences, the times we fell short, what we learned to do in those moments, we find opportunities to connect. Because in a lot of cases, the people we're talking to have been struggling with some of those same things, and they think for all they know that we've never had to deal with it. When in reality, a lot of us have overcome those things. So it creates an opportunity to connect, to share, to encourage that individual. So number one, share your experiences, share your failures. It's not anything to be too prideful from, because here's the deal. Every successful person has failed. They've just refused to let that one failure be the end of their story. They've instead learned from it, grown, gotten better, and found a way to win. Number two, ask better questions. Ask open-ended questions to your teammates, to your coworkers. Ask thoughtful questions. What inspires you most about the work you do here? What do you love to do outside of work that really re-energizes your spirit? Get to know them on a very personal level. Don't ask closed-ended questions. Don't give me a yes or a no or a quick answer. Don't give me something with a work project related. Help me get to know you. And that's on me as a leader to ask better questions, to give you space to open up more, to give us opportunities to better connect and be vulnerable with each other, to build trust. And trust is key, regardless of whether we're in a corporate space, we're a military team, or we're a sports team. We're all trying to pursue the goal, and we have to learn to be able to trust our teammates. And the first way we do that is by asking questions and getting to know each other on a deeper level than just surface level, closed-ended questions. So number two, as a leader, ask better questions. Finally, number three, remember to get your focus off the narrow and look at the bigger picture. In sports, it's the idea that we're still just playing a game. It's not life or death. It's a fun game, and for a lot of people, they're paid to play it. One of the stories I loved in Daniel Cole's Culture Code is about Greg Popovich, the legendary head coach of the San Antonio Spurs. And in that, it talked about how Popovich builds culture of trust, of vulnerability with his players, and specifically how he uses the lens of what all's going on in the world in history to remind them that it's still just a game of basketball that they get the opportunity to play. Pop will show films and documentaries about important pieces in our history. Ask the players their opinions. What would you do in this situation? What are your thoughts on what we just watched? How can we encourage and make sure this doesn't happen again? Or how can we encourage and build on so-and-so's work? See, Popovich is incredible at reminding his players that they play an incredible game of basketball. They're gifted with this great opportunity to be great in a sport, but that there's also a lot more to life than just the sport. And so don't get too low on the lows. Don't get too high on the highs. Just keep showing up, doing your best, being a part of the team, and making an impact beyond the hardwood. Remind your team of the bigger picture sometimes. So number three, look at the big picture. Sometimes get your focus off of what's just going on in the office and look at life outside of it. So if we want to be vulnerable leaders that build a winning culture, we have to encourage vulnerability in our office and in our lives. We do that by opening ourselves up, sharing our own experiences and failures, creating that sense of trust that we're not perfect and we don't expect you to be either, but what we do expect is you to keep showing up and competing. We do that by, secondly, asking better questions, open-ended questions, questions that help us get to know that person on a more personal level. That builds trust, that builds our relationship, that opens us up to connection. And then number three, we move our perspective off of just what we're working on to a much larger perspective in life, to everything else going on in the world. Because sometimes it's that shift that takes the stress and the pressure of what we're working on that's preventing us from being creative, that's preventing us from connecting, and removes it. Because we realize what an opportunity we have here in the moment to do the work that we get to do. And how in the grand scheme of things in life and death, maybe it's not that important. So how can we have fun doing it? And that subtle shift can suddenly unlock creativity, it can unlock teamwork, and it can unlock a whole new winning culture in your office. A vulnerable leader is a winning leader. And just as I struggled with it and continue to work every single day on being more personal, being more vulnerable, sharing both my highs and my lows, showing that not every day is going to be easy, trying to build trust with the people that I serve, the clients I have, the community we've built. I hope you choose to do the same, because that could be just the missing piece to what transforms your culture and your company heading into 2021 and beyond. Go win your week. I'm cheering for you.